Good evening. Hello, everybody. My name is Natalia Crujeiras, and I'm delighted to see a room full of book lovers. This is Miami time. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of traffic, and our guest of honor was delayed, but she's here, and she'll be with us in a second. On behalf of Miami-Dade College of over 160,000 students, I wanted to welcome you to Miami Book Fair. You know, for the last 34 years, because of the vision and the leadership of our college president, Dr. Eduardo Padron, and of Mitch Kaplan of Book and Books, Miami-Dade College has been able to bring to our community the most important literary event in the nation. And I think that deserves a round of applause, right? So tonight we have a very special evening with very strong women that are going to share the stage with us. We're happy to announce that this conversation will be simultaneously translated in English and Spanish. The conversation will be in English. So para nuestros asistentes que hablan español, al final del auditorio van a poder recibir, aquí adelante, ¿dónde están los audífonos? Al final del auditorio, con su identificación, van a poder recibir audífonos para escuchar la conversación traducida instantáneamente. Okay, so I was just explaining that for whomever wants to have the instant translation, at the end of the room, you can get the headset with your ID so you can join the conversation. Miami-Dade College, Miami Book Fair is made possible by the support of course, our friends and family that are here all the time, but an amazing group of people that work together all year long to bring these events to you, and by our thousands of volunteers that donate their time and love to the book fair. The evenings with are also made possible by our partners, our media partners, WLRN, and I want to take a minute to thank them for their support. WLRN is proud to sponsor the Miami Book Fair Evenings With series, and honored to have served the South Florida community for nearly 6 decades. While other media organizations have shrunk, WLRN has grown thanks to the financial support they receive from listeners and viewers like you. The largest portion of their budget comes from the audience. So if you're already a member of the WLRN and donate to them, thank you. If not, please consider becoming a member of WLRN by donating and helping continue the excellent programming of WLRN and NPR News. We thank the WLRN partners for making possible this Evenings With series. We are also very grateful to the Groot Foundation. There have been wonderful friends of the fair supporting many of our very important programs. So I want to invite to the stage Clydette de Groot, who is the director of the Groot Foundation, which supports the Miami Book Fair as well as global literary education and innovation projects. Please help me welcoming her to the stage.
Good evening. It's my great pleasure to introduce Isabel Allende this evening, a woman whose work and life I've followed since reading her very first book, the critical acclaimed House of Spirits, and later Paula. Miss Allende will be in conversation this evening with Maria Elena Salinas, one of the most recognized and influential Spanish-language media journalists in the U.S. Ms. Salinas has a very accomplished resume. She's been inducted into the National Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame and is the recipient of numerous awards, including the Peabody, Walter Cronkite, and Now's Intrepid Award, just to name a few. Isabel Allende has been called the world's most widely read Spanish-language author. Born in Chile, her impressive list of over 60 awards and honors includes receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2014. Her 23 books have been translated into 35 languages and has sold over 65 million copies. But not only is Ms. Allende a prolific writer, she's also an advocate for the empowerment of women and girls worldwide through education, reproductive rights, and economic independence. Her latest book, which we hope you all have a copy of, In the Midst of Winter, set in Brooklyn, Guatemala, Chile, and Brazil, explores the timely issues of human rights, the plight of immigrants and refugees, and even late-life love. I share the sentiments of the Washington Post reviewer who said, "This is a book that will stay with you long after you turn the last page." Please welcome Maria Salinas and Isabel Allende.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm sorry we are late, but I was caught in traffic like everybody else. How can you live in this place?
Welcome to Miami.
Yeah, I know.
It's not only in California that we have traffic, also here. Well, thank you all for being here, and it's really an honor for me to be able to have this chat with one of the most admired and successful authors of our times, and sharing this conversation with all of you. And we're not talking only about her latest book, which is it's the 21st, 22nd, or 23rd? We lost count. There's so many.
Doesn't matter.
You probably lost count too, right?
Doesn't matter, yeah.
But also about some of the issues that are very relevant, that are affecting our society nowadays. So, before we get there, let's start with everybody's favorite subject, love. Because this is a love story, after all. This is a love story about two people in their 60s that meet by chance and are willing to take risks. So how did you come about telling a story about two mature lovers?
Well, I'm 75. What did you expect? I can't even remember how love was before. And in my previous book, in The Japanese Lover, by the way, who doesn't speak Spanish here? You don't speak Spanish. And everybody else speaks Spanish. Por Dios, esto lo deberíamos hacer en español entonces. Bueno, mira, vamos a hacer en los dos idiomas lo más que se pueda, pero espérate. Pero está planeado en inglés, así que tampoco podemos defraudar a la gente que no habla nuestro bellísimo idioma. Okay, volvamos al...
We were talking about love.
Yeah, we were talking about love. So, in my previous book, in The Japanese Lover, the couple is 80. And in this book, the couple is in their 60s. And when I was writing it, I was thinking about mature love because I was alone and I had divorced from my husband after 28 years of marriage. And I thought, well, the rest of my life I will be without a partner. Unfortunately, I am heterosexual because I have wonderful women friends who are available. But at my age, it's almost impossible to find a man who does not have prostate cancer or is not demented. So I thought, okay, there's no way that I will get anybody because also I'm not the kind of person that can go on Tinder. What could I put online?
You know, here I was very worried about, I don't want to get too personal. You know, we have to respect her privacy. So I was being very careful. Well, you said it. You're in love and you're 75 years old. Years young, I should say.
Well, I look good.
So
Look,
so I guess
I look good from a distance, and let me tell you, it takes a lot of money.
So I guess that famous song "Solamente una vez," which means that you only fall in love once, is not really true.
Of course not.
How many times have you fallen in love in your life?
Me? I don't remember, but many times. And also, now we live longer. Before, you could expect to have a marriage that would last a lifetime because you would die around 60. But now, you retire at 60, you are in Medicare at 65, and then you live 30 more years. And so you want to live those years with purpose, with community, with family, and sex.
So is it true that 60s are the new 40s?
What?
Are 60s the new 40s?
60s are 60s. And 40s are 40s.
Oh, please, don't tell me that.
And 75 is 75, but that doesn't mean that I'm in hospice. I still have a life. And I want in my life romance and love and sex.
Why not?
I cannot mention this in front of my son because he cringes.
Well, the two main characters in the midst of winter are, of course, a couple that falls in love in their 60s. Do you think that you're bringing light to an otherwise taboo subject for many? Maybe don't like to talk about that. I mean, you freely talk about it, but many don't.
I think that in general, the media, more than the society, I would say, focus too much on being young and beautiful. And so it is as if the rest of us don't exist, but we do. And we are a growing population of people who are getting older, and getting older with, healthy, educated, often with some resources. So we have a life. And I read the other day that older women are the most influential bracket in the society today, and we could really tip the balance in politics and in everything else if we get involved.
Well, imagine the combination, being a woman and having experience.
Yeah.
That's a force to be reckoned with. Well, people who read your books and who have read your books throughout all of your career know that you don't only inspire and you entertain, but you also educate, whether it be through history or social issues. So you address them in a very, very, very special way that people can relate to. You give them a face, you give them a name, and in this latest book, the name is Evelyn Ortega. Tell us a little bit about Evelyn Ortega.
Okay, let me tell you first what the book is about. The book is about 3 people trapped in a snowstorm in Brooklyn last year. The storm really happened. And the place I chose Brooklyn because I had rented a brownstone in Brooklyn to spend the holidays. And so I knew I had the house, I had the snowstorm, and I didn't have much more. But then these 3 characters sort of appeared in my life. One of them is an NYU professor who is traumatized. The 3 of them are traumatized by something that happened in their past. And they cope with their trauma in different ways. The professor by having a perfect little life where nothing can happen. He's totally safe. He's insured against everything. But you cannot be insured against your bad memories. And the woman is a visiting professor. She's a writer and journalist from Chile who has experienced the military.
Just a coincidence, from Chile.
What?
Just a coincidence, it's from Chile.
No, it's from Chile. It's not me. Well, like me, she's very bossy, and she's vain and all that. But it's not based on me, really.
And like you, she's looking for love.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course.
And sex.
Yeah, sex also.
See, I read it. At least not finished yet.
Sex with cellulite at 75 is not fun. Where were we? And the third character, to me, the most important because it's the catalyst that brings the whole story together, is a young, undocumented woman from Guatemala who lives in hiding and lives in fear. And something happens to her that brings these other 2 characters together, and they decide to help her. Well, you're going to read the book, maybe, but maybe not.
No spoilers. No spoilers.
Okay. I was going to tell you about the body in the trunk, but I won't. Yeah.
No, but we could talk a little bit more about Evelyn. Evelyn, like you said, is from Guatemala. Evelyn is undocumented, and she happens to be in the U.S. running away from a very negative situation in her country, from the gang wars, something that exists not only in Guatemala and El Salvador and Honduras, something that you can relate to a lot of people here in the U.S. at this moment. Why do you think it was important to tell her story at this moment in time?
Well, I have a foundation, and my foundation works with refugees and immigrants, among other things. We support certain programs. So we have been seeing this very closely. Lori, my daughter-in-law, who manages the foundation, and myself. And I wrote this book before Trump, so it's not it's timely, not because of Trump, but because it's a coincidence. These themes, these issues were already there. He didn't invent them. He just picked up a sentiment that was there and gave it a megaphone, and that is what's happening today. So when I wrote the book, the issue of immigration was really important. We had 68,000 kids that crossed the border in 1 year looking for their parents or for safety. And it's numbers, 68,000. It's a political crisis, it's a humanitarian issue, it's a legal issue. Well, each one of these people has a name. They have a face, they have a story. And I get to see some of those stories. And when you meet the person, then it's no longer an abstract issue. We cannot talk about immigration in general, in abstract. We have to talk about people. And so that is why it was important for me to have Evelyn Ortega in the book.
Do you think that by telling Evelyn's story and the Coyote story, you are humanizing undocumented immigrants?
I'm not trying to deliver a message. I'm not trying to do anything in particular. I'm just telling the story of one person. And if that helps someone to see immigration from another angle, well, I will be very honored. But my intention is never to preach. My intention is just to connect. And I feel that that's the whole point of literature. When we read, we know that we are human because there is someone telling us another human story.
It's interesting that you say that the current political climate was not necessarily the inspiration for your book. It already existed. Why do you think this is happening and has been happening for several years now?
Well, we've been talking about immigration not only in the United States. This is a problem in Europe as well. And because we have masses of people running away from violence, from extreme poverty, from gangs, from narcos, and from war. There were no Syrian refugees in Europe a few years ago. Syrian refugees happened because of the situation in Syria. We shouldn't have Central American immigrants here, undocumented immigrants, but these people are running away for their lives. They come from what is called the Triangle of the North. The three countries, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, where there's more violence in the world that is not at war. And what needs to be done is try to improve the conditions in those countries so that people don't have to get out. Nobody wants to leave everything that is familiar to them, their home, their friends, their family, their language, and go to another place where most probably will be received with hostility and aggression.
Exactly. I can relate to what you're saying because as a journalist, I've done a lot of work at the border and in Central America. I recently, this isn't about me, but I just want to let you know, I recently did a special between entre el abandono y el rechazo, between abandonment and rejection. And that is a long title for a TV program, but that's exactly what's happening. These kids feel abandoned in their home country, and then they come here and they feel that there's hostility and they feel rejection. What can you do as a writer to kind of change?
Nothing. The only thing I can do is tell the stories. And that is your job as a journalist and my job as a writer. And then maybe that can change some people's minds. But there's not much that I can do from a political point of view.
What do you think the role of artists, of writers, and even of journalists ought to be in these times where, like you say, of course, racism and anti-immigrant sentiment has been around for a long time, but it's definitely at the height that it's ever been. I have been working in news for almost 37 years, and I've never seen it like this. I've never seen so many hate crimes against immigrants. What do you think we should do?
Well, you know, this comes in waves. Every wave of immigrant that has come to this country has been received with aggression and rejection. Especially those who don't look white, Chinese, Japanese, Jews, Latin Americans. Those are the ones that receive more aggression because we don't look like everybody else in here. But then the second, third generation is part of the big salad bowl that we are here in the United States. And eventually we integrate. So it's just a matter of having patience and keep working.
Why do you think that if Hispanics, many of whom are here, and Latinos in the Spanish language have deeper roots here than almost anyone else besides Native Americans, have to constantly be justifying their presence here, our presence here.
People have no idea of history.
Even if we're American.
Yeah, but because we don't, kids are not taught history the way they should. So all this was Mexican land or Native American land. I live in California, and all that were haciendas of Mexican haciendas until the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo that gave 5 states to Mexico. We forget from where we come, but we are here, and I don't think we're all going to be deported. Maybe me, but not all of us.
Okay, I'm going to read you a quote here.
Don't read me a quote from my own book.
I'm going to read your quote. I know that you want to keep it light, but I'm sorry, I do have to go through this. Donald Trump is truly dangerous. He's a raging lunatic, and he has this following. He may destroy the Republican Party. This seems funny and grotesque, but it is very scary because this is how the Nazi movement started. No one took it seriously. We think it'll never happen here. It might. That sounds like something you would hear right now from an opponent of President Trump. But you said this in December of 2015. 2 years ago, he had not been elected. He was not even the nominee at that time. He was just a front runner. Not many people saw it that way back then. What did you see that so many other people didn't?
Well, I come from a country, from Chile, that was the most solid and longest democracy in the continent. And we elected a socialist government, and in 3 years, with the intervention of the CIA, the conservative forces in the country provoked a military coup, not knowing where that would lead. And we had a military dictatorship, a fascist military dictatorship for 17 years that forced many Chileans, me among them, out of our country. And I saw it, nobody saw it coming, but in 24 hours the country changed. And my question then and my question now is, how come that in 24 hours we had concentration camps in several places in the country? How come that we had torture centers everywhere, that we had torturers? Where were they that we failed to see them? They were always there, like they are in every society, and given the wrong circumstances, they take over. It happened in Spain, in Italy, in Germany, in Argentina, in so many countries in the world. So we think that it will never happen to us, that our institutions are so strong that it won't happen here. We have to be very vigilant, alert, because things happen, and then by the time we take it for granted now, and then by the time we react, it might be too late.
You have said in the past that Chileans didn't really protect their democracy. Do you see any parallels with what's going on in our country now?
We took it for granted. We took it for granted, and then now, when we finally got our democracy back, we are really careful, because it's like health. You only appreciate it when you lose it. While you are healthy, you don't think about it. But then when your body starts to fail, then okay, then you worry about it. The same with democracy and everything else, with love, with friendship, with everything.
Let's go back to the book.
Yeah.
Let's go back to talking about this amazing book.
Oh, yeah.
So, we have these 3 characters. Richard, who's an NYU professor.
Oye, y además, perdón, quiero decir que tampoco este es un libro sobre inmigración solamente, son muchas otras historias, pero todo el mundo pregunta sobre eso y entonces parece un libro mucho más político de lo que verdaderamente es.
Well, you usually try to combine social issues and history in most of your books. I was fascinated by one of your first books, the one that you wrote about your daughter, Paula, in which you kind of remind her of the history of her country as you're talking to her. So I think it's very interesting what you do. It's not just a novel. It's not just a love story. It's you always try to inject something that will help people learn.
No, but I'm not trying.
Not just entertain.
I'm not trying to teach anything. But when I create a character, I imagine that character's life, everything that might have happened in the years of that character's life. And then I see what are the highlights, what are the lowlights. How can I define that life? For example, in The Japanese Lover, as I said, I have a couple that are in their 80s. So my question is, what happened in people who are now 80? What would have happened in their lives that was the most important thing? The Second World War. And if she was Jewish and he was Japanese, she had to run away from the Nazis. She's the daughter of survivors, not survivors, victims of the Holocaust. And he's Japanese in the West Coast. He would have been in an internment camp, 4 years of internment camp. So that determines a lot about the character, and I have to research the historical facts around that. Mm-hmm. But I'm not trying to teach anything. I'm just trying to make the character complex, contradictory, as real people are.
How do you come up with the characters? Do you invent the characters? Are they completely fictional? Or is it someone you've met? Is it someone that you imagine?
Most of the time I get a human model because I'm very prejudiced. And so I will always create a character according to what I think the character is. Let me give you an example. I wrote my only crime novel, Ripper. En español se llamaba El Juego de Ripper. And that's the only crime novel that I have written. I don't think I will write another one. It was very difficult. But I needed a soldier. So in my idea, soldiers have a stereotype. And I would have created a character that would be the stereotype. So I decided to look for a model. And I was very lucky. I was able to get in touch with one of the Navy SEALs that was in the Osama bin Laden team. So I flew from home to Washington to be with him for 3 days. And he was very open. He told me a lot of things, but I was observing him. I realized, for example, that I had imagined this bulky guy with tattoos and whatever. And this was a man that looked totally normal and had very delicate hands, almost feminine hands. I couldn't imagine those hands with a weapon. And then he invited me to his apartment to look at some photographs and his medals and whatever. But I wasn't so interested in that. I was interested in his bathroom. And his
Why?
Why? Because the bathroom tells you a lot about people. So with an excuse, I went to his bathroom and opened all the cabinets to look what was inside. But of course, I mean, you need to know, is he taking sleeping pills? Is he taking Valium? What kind of toothpaste he uses? All that is important to create a character. And then I sneaked into his bedroom to see how his sheets were. So that gave me more to build the character than anything I could have invented.
Now we're all going to go home into our bathrooms and say, let me see what this is about me. This is a learning experience. It just crossed my head. I said, oh my God, what about all the nail polishes I have? And what about all the lipsticks I have? Why do I have so many lipsticks? What does that tell about me?
You have to hide it.
Oh my God. Okay, so we're talking about your characters. Here we are. These are 3 people. Richard, he's an NYU professor. Richard is kind of a little bit boring, right? He doesn't want to have
boring.
Yeah, nothing excites him. No, he wants to just stay locked up in his apartment.
It's so hard to create a boring character that the reader will have some sympathy for him. It's very hard.
And Lucia kind of liked him, right?
Because he's handsome, you know, and she likes the fact that he's handsome and she thinks he's available, but he's not really.
Okay. So, you know, they connect with each other in unexpected ways, some by chance and also by choice. What is the whole process of bringing them together? Because they're so different from each other.
It's like a dance. They sort of look at each other, and there's one part in the book that I like. I don't like my books very much, but this part I like. Lucia looks at herself in the mirror, and this is what she sees. She sees that she doesn't have a waist anymore. She sees that she has wrinkles, that she's aging, and she has these beautiful breasts that are not hers because she had breast cancer and they are implants. So they don't even look part of the body. They look like protruding there. And so what she sees is not appealing. And then we see the same description of the same woman seen by the eyes of Richard. And he sees a completely different person. And so that they're almost opposites. So that to create that tension was very interesting for me.
I think you've raised the curiosity of everyone here who's probably dying to go home and read that book because they're saying, okay, now I don't know these two characters, so where does the Guatemalan undocumented immigrant fit in here? And how does she bring them together? It's really interesting. I'm sure you're going to like it. Well, you know, you have a quote in the book by Albert Camus that inspired the novel titled, "In the midst of winter, I finally found in me an invincible summer." Like the characters in this novel, you know, we all experience our winters, of course. Is this trying to give sort of a message of hope of better days to come and warmer days to come?
La cita en español es muy linda porque dice, en medio del invierno descubrí por fin que tengo en mí un verano invencible. And the idea that we all go through long winters, emotional winters, but there is the hope, the possibility of an invincible summer. I think it's a beautiful idea. Cuando estaba escribiendo el libro, cuando empecé a escribir el libro, yo estaba pasando por uno de esos inviernos largos, emocionales. Pero me acordé que he pasado por otros inviernos peores y que siempre ha habido un verano al final, un verano invencible. Y eso por eso esa cita fue tan importante para mí. Because I was going through this emotional winter in my own life, I could relate to the emotional winter of the characters and create a situation in which even the weather, the winter is a character in the book because it's the emotional winter, but it is also the blizzard, the storm that hit New York last year in January, right when I had begun the book. So both things I could use to bring the story together. And it resonated very much with my own life.
I'm going to just let you all know that you can ask questions, get ready,
Oye,
get your
¿y cómo
questions
vamos a
ready.
hacer eso?
And I'm going to have, I have another question still, but as soon as you're ready to ask the questions, you can walk up to the microphone.
Se pueden
and ask the
acercar
questions.
al
But we
micrófono.
still have, if you can just give me one moment, and we still have one last one before we get there. I just want you to start
Oye,
thinking of
acércate
your
al micrófono porque
questions.
va a haber una cola, así que acércate la primera.
Buena idea.
Ya.
Ya tiene ganas de hablar.
Oye, un momentico, a todos los latinos, por favor hagan una pregunta y no un discurso, porque queremos contestar muchas preguntas y si son muy largas, no vamos a poder.
Está tratando de decir que somos muy dramáticos los latinos, ¿no?
No, a los latinos
De
hay que
repente,
decirles,
les gusta hablar mucho.
No oyen, ustedes no escuchan, no siguen las instrucciones. Como dice mi hijo, madre, cuando todo falla, lee las instrucciones. Porque dice que yo tampoco escucho. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about when you were in exile in Venezuela and you were struggling to try to make ends meet, and you were writing from your kitchen, and that's when you wrote the House of Spirits, which is a book that would forever change your life, and it would turn you into, you know, one of the world's most popular novelists. Back then, you didn't really consider yourself a writer, so how did this transformation come about? From that woman who was in exile writing a book in Venezuela in the kitchen, you didn't have an agent, you didn't even know that you were going to be a writer, and to now being one of the most, you know, revered, respected, read writers, authors in the world.
I have been very, very lucky because there are people who have written better books and have been writing forever, and they don't get that kind of these accolades that I get.
And you think it's luck?
There's an element of luck. Yeah. I know that I'm disciplined and I work a lot, but I don't deserve this. I really don't. No, I'm telling you. No. A ver, señora,
If I were a psychologist, I would say that you have the imposter syndrome. No, you deserve it. You deserve it very well. Se puede presentar, right?
A ver, there.
Can you please introduce yourself? Se pueden presentar, de dónde son y empiezo con su pregunta. Adelante.
My name is Anna Sat. And 22 years ago, I went to Isabel Allende in Coral Gable, because I wrote the book, The House of the Spirit. That book, I wrote it when I was through cancer and I lost a son. At that time, I saw her, and she sent me a letter with a beautiful word for my immune system went up. Here I am, Isabel.
Gracias,
Thank you.
Linda.
Thank
gracias,
you.
gracias. ¿Se mejoró?
Sí, mijita linda, estoy bien, gracias a Dios.
Gracias a tus palabras.
You have inspired someone, you have changed their life, and that was not luck. Next person.
¿Por qué no
Maybe
sacan
we
esa,
can take that barrier
oye,
off
saca
now,
esa
if
barrera
someone-
que hay ahí? Ya.
Okay. Adelante.
Hello.
Hello.
Now I am ashamed because it's not a good story as the previous one.
Baja el micrófono porque no se te oye.
I came from Cuba, and I grew up reading this kind of book, Isabel Allende's book. And I read it at the same time my mother. And we get very connected. I was an adolescent, and my mother was a mature woman, and we both enjoy reading the books at the same time. Now I came here, and I couldn't imagine reading a book written by Isabel Allende in English. So I took the Spanish version. And I had a great illusion coming here to have this book signed and send it to my mother in Cuba. So there is any way I can have this book signed by you?
Mira, están entregando a la gente que tiene el libro en español mi firma. Ya firmé un montón de book plays y te lo van a dar para que se lo pongas al libro.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you for your story.
Yeah.
Your name and your question, please.
Hi, good evening, Isabel. My name is Roberto Donoso. I'm from Ecuador.
¿De dónde eres tú?
Ecuador.
Ecuador.
It's such a pleasure and an honor to meet you. I'm 45 years old, and I actually started writing my very first novel, which is based on my mom's life story. She passed away when she was 48. And you were the inspiration, because when I learned that you at 40 wrote your first novel, and House of the Spirits is one of my favorites, I thought, Isabel could do it, I'm going to do it. My question for you is, can you talk about a little bit of how you manage when you create characters that are largely based in some cases on real people, dead or alive? That's something I'm struggling a little bit with, because a lot of people in my story are actually still around. And so what is the process like, and if you've encountered any issues with it, have you handled them? And I also have a little gift for you.
Gracias. So the question is, how do you deal with something that is not a is it fiction or a memoir?
It's a novel. It's a novel, but it's largely based on.
If it's a novel, you are free to do whatever you want, and if you think you are stealing somebody else's story, as long as it's a novel, it doesn't matter. If you're writing a memoir, however, you have to be respectful, because maybe it's not your story to tell. When I wrote The House of the Spirits, which began as a letter to my grandfather, at the beginning I was sort of cautious, but then I changed all the names, and it became a story that I could write freely, invent whatever I wanted. I mixed characters. Of course, my family didn't talk to me for 20 years.
That was my question.
But who cares? So if you have to choose between the family and the novel, stick to the novel. Yeah. Gracias. Muchas gracias.
Very nice to know that you inspired this young man. I don't think that was luck either. Adelante, next question.
Y no me trajo regalo.
No, that's what I was about to say. Acabo de decir eso. No, I was just about to say that it's too bad I didn't bring a gift. My name's Alex Suarez, and I'm a student senator here on this campus. And first wanted to mention that my grandfather happened to be born in Tacna in 1928. As you probably know, it was recuperated by Peru in 29, so he was Peruvian. And it's interesting that you were born in Peru, but you're Chilean, so it's kind of, yeah. So my question is, okay, so some people might not be aware that your uncle was the president of Chile, was a socialist. So I was wondering, like, because I write as well, how does political philosophy help influence your writing in general?
Okay, how did the fact that I am related to President Allende influence me politically? Actually, what really influenced me politically was a book by Eduardo Galeano, The Open Veins of Latin America, Las Venas Abiertas de América Latina. Lo leí cuando era muy joven, como tenía 20 y tantos años, leí el libro y nunca más pude ver el mundo en términos neutros. Lo veo en términos de los poderosos que explotan a los más débiles y cómo podemos cambiar ese mal equilibrio en el mundo. Ese libro, más que ninguna otra cosa, me hizo consciente políticamente cuando era joven. Pero el hecho de ser sobrina de Salvador Allende no cambió las cosas, porque en mi familia había mucha gente conservadora. No tiene nada que ver con el hecho de que fuéramos parientes.
But it influenced your writing a little bit too, right? Your philosophy in general. Right?
My philosophy is pretty clear.
Yeah.
I've been worried about social and political issues all my life, and I have voted for the left always. So that's my political philosophy, but I'm not blind. The fact that I may have some political idea doesn't make me blind, for example, to the situation in Venezuela today, which is terrible.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Very good question. Next. Thank you. Hi, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, Isabel. I'm Angela. I'm Colombian. I wanted to ask you about how you write. Do you write in Spanish, in English? When we read a book in Spanish, you wrote it in Spanish, or you write both English and Spanish?
I write only in Spanish, solo en español. Y todas las cosas importantes en mi vida suceden en español. Cocino en español, rezo, cuento, hago aritmética.
Dios mío, los detalles vienen ahora.
Ya.
¿Qué más?
Y por supuesto hago el amor en español, porque me sentiría ridícula jadeando en inglés. Pero además, desgraciadamente el novio que tengo ahora no habla una palabra de castellano. Nada. Eso puede ser una ventaja.
¿Cómo le hacen? ¿O es muy personal preguntar? ¿Cómo hacen para comunicarse? Sí.
Well, I don't.
Okay.
How do I communicate in bed? Well, I don't. It's easier, in a way. Ya, pero no hablemos de esa parte que es muy íntima. ¿Cuál es la pregunta?
Entonces, si leemos un libro en inglés, ¿está traducido por alguien más?
Mira, yo no lo leo en inglés cuando me toca corregir la traducción. Y a mí me parece que queda mejor en inglés.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, the translators.
The
translators do a great job. Read it in English.
Oh, thank you, Isabel.
Well, thank you for your question.
Wait
Next.
for the movie.
Next.
Mi nombre es Gloria Inés Cruz, yo soy colombiana, yo soy de descendencia indígena. Mi familia en Colombia, they always follow you with your books and everything because tú sembraste that roof that you say you never forget who you came from. And one of the things that caught my attention just now is when you say you don't like your own books. Why you don't like your own books?
I don't like to read my own books because I already wrote them, and I know the ending. So why would I read it? I'd rather read somebody else's book.
And, I would like to thank you because you're always aware of the worldwide issues when it comes to the people, the immigrants, the everybody. So I noticed that like you always follow that pattern, and that's really important because some books, when you read it, you don't see that social issues, but you always had that.
Well, the social issues in my books are because I'm Latin American, and every Latin American writer, except those who write crime novels or whatever, deal with political and social issues because they affect our lives. Why do we have, for example, we were talking about why all these immigrants, undocumented immigrants come because of the political and social issues in their countries. You cannot ignore that if you are telling those stories. And so in my life has been affected dramatically by political circumstances over which I had no control. I had a life planned in a certain way. And after the military coup, I ended up having another life. So, of course, when I write, I think that the macro world affects each individual.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Very good. Next.
Hi, thank you for being here. My name is Atena. And
Can you get closer to the microphone?
Hello, can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
My name's Atena. I live here in Miami, and I'm a writer myself. And I wanted to ask you a little bit. I write a lot of stories and poetry, and people always tell me that they're whimsical. And it kind of is frustrating because sometimes I feel like it takes away from the actual point of what I was trying to get to. And I know that a lot of times people characterize your work as magical realism. And I wanted to know if you would speak a little bit to that term and if you ever struggled with that, especially earlier on in your work with like House of Spirits.
Okay, I've been accused of writing magical realism. And magical realism is not like salt and pepper that you sprinkle everywhere. It appears in some of my books, not in all of them. Some stories lend themselves to it and some don't. And let me make a distinction between fantasy and magic realism. Fantasy is Harry Potter. It's the invisibility cloak. Yeah. Magic realism is, and you will never see the invisibility cloak in real life. Magic realism is something that you can experience or you can see, but you cannot explain. So, for example, invisible Indians in the Amazon. It has an explanation. They paint their bodies in the colors of nature, and they move so swiftly that they can be 3 yards away and you don't see them. So that's magic realism. Garcia Marquez explains it in a beautiful way when he, in 100 Years of Solitude, he has a scene in which, I think it's Remedios La Bella or somebody, flies to heaven in body and soul. He wrote the scene several times, and it didn't work until he had her hanging the sheets to dry, and then a wind comes and takes her with the sheets. With the sheets is magic realism. Without the sheets is fantasy.
Very good explanation. Thank you very much. Good question. Hello.
Hola Isabel.
Hola.
Soy de Chile. Mi nombre es Verónica y vivo acá hace un par de años ya. Y, ¿se me escucha? Ahí sí.
Acércate al micrófono.
Ok. Mi pregunta es, primero quiero agradecerte porque aunque digáis que no enseña, tus libros me han enseñado así de la historia de nuestro país, pero más de lo que me enseñó el colegio. So, te agradezco eso. Y quiero preguntarte si en algún minuto has pensado o has tenido alguna oferta para hacer otra película de algún libro tuyo. ¿Cómo te sientes con eso de poder...
Okay, she's asking about the movies. I have had options for several of my books, and I don't sign the contract at the end because the contracts have become draconian. They want the rights. First of all, they want a contract that has no ending, which is very, very dangerous to sign. Then they have the right to do anything they want with the book, anything. They can do TV series, they can do comic books, they can do whatever they want. And also, they want the copyright of the characters. So if I use my own characters in another story, I have to pay them a royalty. I cannot sign that kind of contract. So now I'm doing contracts with television, which is much, much better. And there is a TV series that is coming out is being produced in Chile with Inés of My Soul, Inés del Alma Mía. Están haciendo la teleserie. Oye, by the way, a los latinos, mañana, ¿qué día es mañana? Jueves. No, pasado mañana, el viernes, en Jane the Virgin aparezco yo.
¡Ay, qué That's great, excelente.
Yeah, it was so much fun. They invited me for a cameo appearance.
And I went. What is your character there?
Nada, aparezco como yo misma.
Yeah? Under what circumstances?
Oye, pero the funny thing is that I had to look younger. Entonces me tenían como 3 horas en maquillaje para que me viera más joven. Por Dios que es difícil verse joven hoy. Muy difícil. It was very funny.
Gracias, Isabel.
Good. Now we got to watch Jane the
¿Se
Virgin.
acuerdan de Rogelio?
One more
El
reason.
personaje de Rogelio en la vida real es igual, exactamente igual.
Gracias por tu pregunta.
Sí, ahí está. Ah, otra cosa.
No, le toca a la otra persona ahora.
Gracias por tu pregunta. Next.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
My name is Maggie. My parents are from Paraguay, but I grew up here in Miami. And originally I wanted to ask the bilingual question, but that was already taken care of. So I'd like to ask another question about technique, because I read once that you have a ritual that you start your books on a certain day at the beginning of the year in a certain place, and that helped you be successful for many years. And I was wondering if you still adhere to that technique, which I guess is a combination of practice and maybe also looking for good luck.
Good question.
I think that we should stop the line, because no more people adding to the line, because we won't have time to answer all the questions. So who is the last person in the line? Okay, you are the last one. Hold the line. So she's asking about how do I write, cómo escribo. Con disciplina. I start all my books on January 8th. Because I need a day to start, I have to carve the time in my year to have silence and solitude to write. And I have a complicated life. If I don't do that, I won't ever be able to write. Además, escribo todos los días, desde la mañana, varias horas. Antes podía escribir 10 horas, ahora ya no puedo. 6 y quedo agotada. Investigo mucho. I do a lot of research before and during the process of writing. And while I'm writing, I practically don't get out. I don't have any social life. I try not to travel, although I have to travel to Chile often because my parents are still alive. My mother is 97. My stepfather is 101.
Excellent.
They are immortal. No, don't clap. It's not fun. They are immortal, and I'm really thinking that they should be helped to the other world at some point.
That's inspirational. I want to live to be 100.
Why would you want to be 101?
Because there's so much to do in life.
They look so ugly.
That's true. But then with a little bit of money, maybe we can change that.
No money can change 101.
Is it true, adding to her question, is it true that you don't let anyone into your office when you're writing? That
I don't
your
know.
sacred place?
I close the door and I don't want anybody in my space because the literary spirits are there, waiting until the next year.
Very good.
Yeah.
Good answer.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, talking back, a little bit back to my parents, my mother, who is totally lucid but disabled physically, but she has the brain of a 30-year-old, she has been wanting to be a widow for the last 15 years. And it is not happening. So she writes to me every day, and she says, another day. That's how the letter begins, another day. Okay, next person.
Thank you. Next.
Hola Isabel, soy Claudia de Venezuela. Quería igual agradecerte por todas esas sensaciones, por todo ese mundo al que nos llevas cuando te leemos. Realmente eres maravillosa. Y ahora que te escucho, ahora que tengo la oportunidad de estar acá, te digo, ¿cómo estás con los audiolibros? Porque eres tan elocuente que a mí me encantaría pasar todo el día aquí escuchándote y audiovisual porque realmente eres como escribes.
O sea, tú estás preguntando por los audiolibros,
sí.
En 2 palabras. Están en inglés. Mis libros están ya en audiolibro, se pueden escuchar.
¿Y en español con tu misma
segura.
voz?
En español no estoy segura que estén ya.
The question is about audiobooks. And the answer is that they're
Yeah,
already there.
They
They're
are
out
in
there.
English. They are
Bueno,
in English.
pues no soy experta, pero estoy segura que mucho lo leeríamos y te disfrutaríamos muchísimo.
Thank you. You know, I'm addicted to audiobooks because I listen to them in the car. I get half of my reading done with the audiobooks. They are wonderful.
Thank you for your question.
Bueno,
Next.
muchísimas gracias.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Alicia María Vallejo, soy de
Acércate
Colombia.
al micrófono, no
Así
se te
es.
oye. Más.
¿Más? Ahí.
Ahí.
Soy Alicia María Vallejo, soy de Colombia. Bueno, llevamos muchos años siendo amigas. Más de 20 años he leído casi todos tus libros. Gracias por todo lo que has aportado a mi vida. Quiero decirte que soy pintora. Trabajo con un grupo de personas en la librería de North Miami Beach. El año pasado hicimos un homenaje a Maya Angelou, donde diferentes artistas nos inspiramos en la obra de ella. Salió una exposición maravillosa. Este año, para el mes del marzo, el mes de la mujer, tú eres nuestra artista, tú eres nuestra escritora.
Muchas gracias.
Para nosotros, o sea, es un evento que realiza la ciudad y somos muchos artistas, va a haber una convocatoria donde la idea es que nosotros nos podamos inspirar en tus obras y hacer un homenaje. Entonces hoy te estoy invitando para que en marzo, si es posible, nos puedas acompañar.
Muy linda.
Entonces,
¿tiene alguna pregunta, perdón?
No, era una invitación.
Gracias.
Y darte las gracias.
Estoy segura que se sintió honrada. ¿Una más? Sí. Dos más, creo.
No, hasta la última de la
Bueno,
cola.
es que ahí la señorita Natalia dice que tenemos que terminar, así es que vamos a hacer únicamente 2 preguntas más.
Bueno, ya tenemos los que están en la cola.
Sí, ya quito algunas, a ver, ya les mandó a su silla. Natalia, con su chicotito. Adelante, la siguiente pregunta.
Hola, mi nombre es Alejandra.
Y el mío es Marian.
Somos de Puerto Rico y cuando estábamos en escuela secundaria leímos La ciudad de las bestias, El bosque de los pigmeos, El reino del dragón de oro y queríamos saber cuál fue la inspiración para esa trilogía que no sigue como el mismo patrón de los restos de los libros que son como para una audiencia madura.
Well, I've only written 3 books for young adults. Okay. A trilogy that is City of the Beasts, Kingdom of the Golden Dragon, and Forest of the Pygmies. And I wrote that for my 3 grandchildren. I had promised them a book. Fortunately, it's only 3. So I didn't have to continue with the series, which would have been horrible, because I wrote the first one with some enthusiasm, the second one not so much, and the third one, it was so boring. Because you keep repeating, it's a formula, and you repeat the characters. It's a different adventure. But I don't work like that. I need to create something from scratch every time. And also, I don't like kids. So it doesn't help. I could write books about dogs, but about kids.
Pero ¿de dónde saca la inspiración cuando ya no quiere seguir escribiendo, como ha mencionado?
That's a good question. How do you get inspiration when you don't want to write anymore?
What's the question? Sorry.
How do you get the inspiration when you don't feel like writing anymore or continuing with it?
In that case, I had the 3 grandchildren, so there was no way that I could eliminate one of them. So I had to write the 3 books. So I created 3 adventures, but often when I start my books on January 8th, I'm not inspired, and I don't wait for inspiration. I show up. And eventually something will happen. I show up every day in front of my computer and I try. When I get young writers, aspiring writers, who ask me, how do you do it? I say, you have to show up. You have to really try. The muse is not going to come flying through the window and give you a story. That happens very seldom. And so I don't wait for inspiration. And when the few times that I have been blocked, what they call the writer's block, that happened after my daughter died, I remember that I'm a journalist by training. And if I give myself a subject and enough time to research, I can write about almost anything. So I know that I won't be blocked for too long.
Okay, very good question. Thanks for your question.
We would love to have the opportunity to have more questions. Unfortunately, we have another event. So if Marilena, if you have any other more questions for our guest. And then
¿Y las 2 personas que están atrás?
Es que ya se movieron de la línea otras personas que estaban antes que ellas. Nos encantaría darles el espacio. Desafortunadamente tenemos otro evento. Podríamos pasarnos toda la noche hablando con ustedes.
Ya nos echaron gente. Ya nos echaron.
Bueno, thank you very much, Natalia. Thank you very much, Isabel. Thank you so much.
Wonderful audience. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Gracias.
Thanks to all of you for coming.
I also just want to point out to everybody that all of you have signed books. So all of your books are signed. So don't worry about having to rush the stage for a signed copy. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you throughout.